I'm talking with sophomore Liam McKay of the MSUB men's cross-country team.
I think we're, a lot of us are in a lot better shape than last year, and as for the newcomers, I think it's a huge learning curve going from high school training into the college level, but I think some of them are starting to, come around to Dave's philosophy and coaching, which is a lot more running as opposed to maybe some of them are used to in high school. So I think it's going very well. Intense and hard. 2 workouts a day, lots of running, lots of hills.
So at Alaska, you ran 2 races. The first one was an 8K, and then you had a break, and then you had a 5K on Saturday. Why don't you talk about the 2 races and the 2 strategies that you and the team had going into the event?
Well, the 8K was honestly just getting our feet wet. Obviously, first meet of the season, none of us had really any expectations. I mean, obviously it's still a race, you want to do well, but we didn't know what to expect of ourselves. So for me personally, I went out, I was surprised at how fast the race went out, and I think compared to what we were doing and not really being in race like mentality, it was a surprise to me. But for the 5K after the 8K, for me personally, I was ready for how fast that race went out, and I feel like I attacked it very well at the start. But I think for the kind of training we do, we're definitely more suited for the longer distances. I actually think we'd be even better in the 10K than the 8K, which is good because our regionals is a 10K. So
you've had a week off, and this week you're headed to Bozeman. Why don't you talk a little bit about the training that you're doing right now?
We're starting to implement a little bit more speed work into our workouts for sure. Not a lot, but it's slowly getting there. It's still a lot of just miles and running, so nothing really new. Lots of hills, though, this past week. I think that's gearing us more up for Griak, though, than Bozeman, as Bozeman's relatively flat.
And what are your goals for the meet this week?
I'm not sure. It's we're racing a lot of different teams we're not used to racing. Like there'll be a few D1 teams there for sure. I think my goals will be just based off of my own personal performance, time-wise. If I ran like in the low 26 range for the 5 miles, I'd be happy with that.
I'm here with MSUB head men's and women's cross-country coach, Dave Coppock. Dave, you finished your first event in Alaska. The men and the women both ran 2 races. Why don't you talk a little bit about each team and the 2 races that they've run so far?
Yeah, there were 2 races up there for each of the teams. They ran men ran an 8K on the first meet, and then 2 days later they ran a 5K, and then the women it was a 6K and then a 5K 2 days later. The 5K distance was a little tougher for us just because of it's so short, but the guys did really well on the 8K. They felt really good. They felt like they could have run another 2 kilometers for the 10K. They were a little behind after about maybe halfway through the race, and then they really moved up around 3 miles and packed up really well. So that was a good start for them. And then the 5K was a little tougher for them. They really couldn't get going, get out real fast, and they started to come up at 3 miles, but they kind of ran out of distance there. They all felt really good afterwards, but both teams were a little tired though going into the meet. We only started practice the week before, and so they only had a few days to just get ready, getting used to running a little faster. And we trained pretty hard that week. We had Robert Peterson, the week of the meet, got 100 miles in, which is quite a bit with 2 races, and I know the other guys were up around 80 miles. So they put in a lot of training during that week. Yeah, and on the women's side, Rio Frame ran a really good race. She moved up steadily during both races, and I think the women had a little better 5K than they did 6K. I think they were kind of getting used to starting to run hard again, and by the time they ran the 5K, I think they were feeling a little better. They seemed to pack up their group a little more too. So again, they were pretty tired. So that was a pretty busy week and a half there. To have 3 days of practice and a time trial, and then fly off to Alaska. And we're up there for almost 6 days, and then come back and school's starting. So we didn't miss any class luckily, but we had a couple good weeks since then.
So let's talk about the results. The men's, Robert Peterson placed first in both races, and Liam McKay placed third in both races.
Yeah.
So a good start for your team on the men's side. Why don't you talk a little bit about how they're looking so far?
Well, yeah, they looked real good, just like I said from the start, and also being a little tired training through that meet. The next week they were kind of just getting their legs back under them from the trip and all that and all the racing they did. And this week's practice looked really good. There were some people that were starting to move up, and I can tell some of the women I don't think came in as good a shape as the men did this year. I think the men did quite a bit of running this summer, and they're still running well, and they're starting to pack their group up really well, which is what you want to do. But I noticed the women were starting to do that as well, so they're starting to come around into shape in just 3 weeks now.
So this next week, you guys are traveling a little closer to home. You're going to be in Bozeman.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about the course and your expectations for the race?
Yeah, it's close. It's 145 miles over there, and I don't even get settled in the bus until we get there practically. But yeah, it'll be a good competitive meet. It's hosted by Montana State University, a D1 school. There'll be some other Big Sky Conference schools there. Utah State, Idaho. Well, not Utah State. Idaho State will be there as well from the Big Sky, and then Utah and Utah State will be there representing the Division I schools. For non-Division I, Carroll College is really strong this year. Their men, well, both their men and women are really strong, and I think they're ranked nationally in the NAIA. So I think Carroll's women will do really well there. And we'd like to be able to run with. I think we can run with Montana State and Montana. I think the guys